Yay!
Yay!
Welcome, everyone. And
Well,
I'm just hoping to bring this up on my phone so I could see comments a little better as they come in. But
yes, I'm doing the same.
we are so excited to be here today and to be here with you and to share some of what has been coming up for us and why it's so important to us, why we are so passionate about bringing this information to you. So I'm Janet Raftis. I am a quantum creatrix, divine feminine channel. I am here with my very dear soul sister, Ina Lucas, who is a shamanic channel, alchemical healer phenomenon. And together we weave our energies in such a way that we are able to really catalyze profound and transformative shifts in the people that we work with. Hey Jade, hey Betty, hey Jessica, oh Susan, it's good to see you all here with us today. So yeah. Is there anything else you want to throw into that introduction?
Yeah, I just am excited to kind of bring this transmission through as so much is shifting so fast, and you know the just it's why we're bringing through all that we're going to be talking here about today in the sister wound and the blood wound. And I had the most intense healing magic dreams last night that were bringing through the power and the potency of what's being healed in us right now.
Yeah.
And you're the powerhouse feminine historian, goddess activator. So I was there to start bringing us in. Yes. Your medicine.
Yes. Okay. Let's weave some divine creatrix, feminine medicine. So, you know, a really good starting place for this, because we want to talk about the sister wound, but we also want to talk about how it is connected to the blood wound, the menstrual wound, right? Mm-hmm. So a really good starting place for this is that a long time ago, thousands of years ago, and even, you know, even as recently, there was medieval England. The word for menstruation was bledson, and bledson meant blessing. And this, I think, says it all, right? Because what we have now is that we refer to it as the curse. Right. And so it is this terrible thing that befalls us when we hit adolescence. And when it happens, we are, you know, expected to be miserable, bitchy, PMSy, bloaty, not feeling good, like, right? There's all there's like all this really heavy negative stigma attached to this experience that all of us who are born with female body parts experience, right? And so, but when we go back, you know, 3,000 years, 2,500, 3,000 years ago, it was a very different story. And women tended to, because there was no electricity and no, you know, concrete and all this stuff, women tended to all bleed at the same time, and they bled during the dark moon into new moon. And it was which is where we are, actually. We are about to enter into dark moon energy when you know, this historically would have started for all of us, really, or for at least most of us. And during that time, women would gather in community, and they would lay out straw mats, and they would just bleed onto the straw, and they would change out the straw. And that was how it was handled. And women all worked together. They were able to come out of their busy lives of raising children. I mean, they would take the babies into the tents with them, but they didn't have to be in that day-to-day raising children and feeding everybody and waiting on people and so forth and so on. They got to retreat together into these menstrual huts, and they with the women in their community, and they would all, during this time, they would really like commune. This was like a sacred and holy time. I mean, I'm sure there was a little bit of gossip and this and that, you know, but for the most part, it was a time for them to really come together and to honor their bodies and this sacred rite, because the blood was so important. It was the connection to the goddess, to the divine mother. It was what brought life into the world. I mean, think about it. We understand how blood works these days, but back then, women could bleed for several days and not die, right? And not like have this like apparent wound, or right, like they just have
right.
for
Yeah.
them. And it was like this really holy experience. And so even, you know, way back when women entered into when they, you know, getting, you know, Menarche was a huge honor. It was like this a big deal. There were ceremonies and rituals done, and the blood was taken in ceremonious act and placed in the fields for fertility, because it was so holy and so powerful. And the women in these tents, they would come together and they would sing and they would do healing work on one another. They would connect with the goddess. They would honor the goddess and pray to her. They would go on healing journeys. They would do shamanic type alchemical healings. They can trace earliest forms of hypnosis back to these tents. In Greece, they were called like Hera's womb colleges. Hera's name itself is connected to womb consciousness. And there was all of this sacred ceremony around it, and women holding each other, being with each other in community while they bled, and really being in the bond of sisterhood, right? Which is so important. And what happened when the patriarchy started to rise is that of course, men found this to be very threatening, because women were so powerful. It was, you know, they suspect that there was like, because women are also very sexual. So for those of us who know this, like when your period comes on, at the time that you're least likely to get pregnant, you are like the horniest, right? Your body is like, and so that was a little threatening to men too. That women could feel comfortable without them, right? And that they could engage in sacred sexual practices that didn't necessarily need men or lead to impregnation, right? That were sacred and holy as well. And so men, because they were so threatened by how psychic the women were, about their healing capacity, their ability to bring life into the world, their ability to be sensual human beings that did not need them necessarily, like there was a lot that threatening the fragile male ego, right? And so the patriarchy started to drive a wedge into the relationships that women have with one another. And so this was really seen as like, first of all, like sort of like the cessation of the tense, or the meaning of the tense changing to where it was a way that of more a form of banishment, perhaps, than a sacred ceremony. There was the things that used to stand for womb consciousness, like the word hysteria actually comes from that root of womb consciousness, which is so empowering and gorgeous. Like all of a sudden hysteria turned into this thing that was like angry, bitter, crazy, right? Like out of her mind. And it was these little wedges that were really that were being pushed into the dynamics between women. And women were starting to be, when women were in this type of power, they were starting to be seen as threatening. And so we start to see some of this in the mythology as it changes. So like the mythology of Lilith changing. Lilith originally in Sumeria, in that area, was a really empowered goddess who was one of Ishtar's handmaidens, who was engaged in sacred sexual rites, and then eventually she ended up becoming like a demonic she-demon who stole men's nocturnal emissions. We see it in the story of Athena and Medusa, where Athena, they were originally a part of the same triple deity that came over from Libya. And then eventually, you know, Athena became sort of like the model of the good girl, right? The virginal warrior standing up for the patriarchy goddess. And Medusa, who had the snakes for her hair and froze men, basically rendering them impotent. And the snake being the symbol of the divine feminine. That was a very symbol. The Medusa's head of snakes is a symbol of Kundalini rising, the psychic power, connection to source energy, right? And
she's badass.
She was badass. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just did I had a meditation with her in my sisterhood yesterday, and I mean, it was amazing. But you know, like, so Athena in the later mythology, right after the patriarchy started telling the story, Athena's the one who sends Perseus to behead, take off that Kundalini rising head, right? Sever her from it's like right across the throat chakra. I mean, it's huge. It's so symbolically so rich, right?
Oof.
So,
goosebumps.
Yeah. So we see now, like, okay, now we know Athena good, Medusa bad, right? Yeah. So, and I think, do you want to take it from there?
What did you say?
Do you want to take over? Like, I mean, you know, sharing how this is really showing up in our society these days. I mean, that's just the beginning of it, right? Here we are 2,000 years later.
What you said is just so potent, you know. Athena good, the woman who takes on the masculine traits as you know, the warrior, and Medusa, the one filled with, you know, the power, the mysticism, the psychicness, the Kundalini energy, bad. And just as you were saying that, so much, I'm sure, and I know you see this all the time too, Janet, in the healing work that we do, is that cutting off from the neck. You know, like things are so stuck here. Energy's not able to flow down. And we have been beheaded. So many of us have been beheaded either physically in past lives or just energetically in this life. Like, we've been so cut off from our bodies and our menses and our sexuality. And oh my gosh, it's so big.
It's so big. Deep. And you know, there's one other thing I guess I should mention, because in the shifting of the mythology, which is so hugely important too. So originally, a lot of these goddesses were very in the sexual power, and Medusa was one of those. So Medusa mothered 2 children with Poseidon. And in the original stories, you know, she fell in love with the sea god, and they engaged in this beautiful sexual experience, right? Well, in the retelling of the stories later, it was shifted to where she was raped. She was raped by Poseidon. Same thing happened to Persephone, who in the original mythology went to Hades of her free will. She said to her mom, like, there are all these souls stuck in the underworld and they need help. And so she opted to become a psychopomp and went down to Hades, went down to the underworld, married Hades, and created this, and became this really empowered dark goddess energy, right? In the later mythology, Hades rapes her. Pre-Zeus, when it was all, you know, like Hera existed before Zeus, and she was, you know, one of the mother goddesses. Zeus comes along, he's out raping women all over the place. This was a big part of that silencing of the women, and the women, I mean, like, and you need to be quiet, and Zeus is having affairs all over the place, so he's pitting all the women against each other. Hera, who used to be this divine mother of abundance, so forth and so on, all of a sudden, she's catty, right, with the other women, because she's jealous and she's resentful. This is all we see how in these strong archetypal stories, right? So how do you see that manifesting, Ina?
Yes. So, Janet, I love your transmissions of these stories. They're so potent because, like, just for everybody that's listening in, there is an activation that happens as you're sharing them, and there's a memory that happens, and so that history and those archetypes are so important to know, because now it's like, so how does this show up in our modern day lives? Yeah. And our, you know, our disconnection from our that feminine lineage and our connection to moon cycles and all of that. And it shows up as competition in women, judgment, criticism. It shows up in all of these sister wounds where women are pitted against each other. It shows up as misogyny that we carry in our own bodies. Yeah. As women, you know, as women and men both carry the patriarchy and the misogyny within us. So that my full moon release this month is I release unconscious misogyny, because it's like we've known this stuff, but somehow we're, as the veil keeps getting thinner and thinner, as we keep understanding more and seeing more, now it's like, it's this huge realization of the misogyny, the hate of women is so deep inside our bodies. And it's the hate of self. You know, it shows up as how many of, you know, those of you that identify as women grew up like really hating your body, hating who you are, not being able to accept yourself, feeling disembodied, constantly comparing yourself to others, and not wanting anything to do with your period, or hating your period because it's so painful. And I mean, it's just, and then the lack of grandmothers, great grandmothers, you know, the handing down of the rites of passage in ceremony around, you know, coming into your period, and that this is a blessing, that this is, you know, the we've lost the rites of passage when women come into their blood, and instead moms don't talk about it. I mean, how many of you, like I know so many stories of women who didn't even know what a period was, and they woke up bleeding, you know, and they were scared to talk to their mom about it. The mom doesn't talk to them about it. They don't talk to their friends about it. Like the lack of communication around this thing, but is our biology. It's nutballs, you know, like, why is this sinful, this natural process of you know, being human and having a body that is capable of bringing life into the world. Yeah. So it's so the level of sister wounding that comes from it, and the level of you know, period issues, like physical symptoms, that happen because we're all disjointed and far apart and messed up with EMFs and lack of connection to cycles, versus coming together, you know, in these natural ways. And, you know, if you have women in the house, you know, you tend to bleed together, you tend to get in cycles together. Mm-hmm. And when you start to do that, like it's like co-regulation, you know. There's so much power in the gathering and gathering strength together at these times. Yeah,
and the harmonizing and weaving that happens of energies. I love that Emily is saying no one talks about the gift of menopause either, and Emily, right, talking about it. Because of that. Yeah, we actually did something on the witch wound not too long ago that you can find on my page, and we talked about the croning years in the witch wound. So for those of you, I'll actually link it in here later. So for those of you who are interested in that, it's so important too. Thank you for bringing that up. And that's one thing that Ina and I were really noticing, like she's talking about here, is that, you know, they're used to harmonizing, whereas now there's more, like she's saying, competition, right, and judgment, and we're not taught to come together in these ways. And so one of the things that happened was Ina and I recently facilitated this really, really powerful healing session with a beautiful woman who was really able to surrender into the space, and together there was a really powerful weaving of energy. So when Ina and I worked together, for those of us who have worked with us, even in our Sacred Activation Journeys group, which is a free Facebook group if you're interested in going there, and on Fridays we do a little mini activation every week. And one of the things that has really happened for us is that we have found a way to really harmonize our energies and to weave our energies together. And then we came together in this healing session with this woman and wove her energy in with us. And do you want to speak a little bit about it? It was so...
Yeah. So as we're shifting out of this masculine dominated model, even with healers, with business coaches, where it's like one is a guru and, you know, and one is more powerful than the other, we're really shifting into this remembrance of there is no power over and over or under, right? We're coming back to that remembrance that we are each the power, and as the power, when we weave together, we, you know, as individuals, when we come together collectively, the healing is so much deeper because it's an equality of using each of our energies to rise up together. And that's really what happened in that session, is that, you know, Janet and I were midwifing essentially the energy of, you know, of witnessing and acknowledging the power and the potency of, you know, this beautiful sister. And as we're being witnessed, as we're being acknowledged by others, our power comes in. And as we witness a woman or, you know, any being coming into their power, that witnessing brings forth more power in us. And it's all this up leveling. There's no competition there. It's just this beautiful, it's so stunning to witness someone coming into, like, being reborn, coming into their knowing, coming into their truth. And that's part of what happens when we're coming together in sisterhood, when we're coming together in circle in this way.
Yes. Yeah. And so we got like a divine download following that session for a red tent healing temple that we feel super called to do. And we have our first one, our initiation, this upcoming Friday from 7 to 9 Eastern, 4 to 6 Pacific. And it is a healing temple. It is a place for women to come together and to weave their energies in support of elevation of one another, and to do deep, cathartic, ritual, ceremonial, holy healing work together. We're going to do it by working with intentions, new moon intentions. We are going to do it by working with sound, frequencies. We're going to channel the goddess and the divine beings that want to come through to support us. We're going to hold this space. Ina and I are creating a container here, a womb consciousness container for all of us. And within that container, we are hoping to, well, not even hoping to, it is going to happen.
It's already done.
It is a weave of this profound tapestry of energies and gifts and soul vibrancies. It's just this most luscious thing. I don't have words.
I know. And so each of us came in with specific keys, codes, gifts. We came in with specific DNA from our blood lineage, from our family lineage, and also from our soul lineage, all the different lifetimes that we've lived. And in this physical incarnation here, we are an accumulation of our bloodlines and soul lines. And in that is the potency of our medicine. And what Janet and I are everyone has their own unique skill set. And Janet and I are very powerful as healers on our own. And when we come together, the level of activation is so much more powerful. And one of our individual and collective gifts is bringing back that remembrance and awakening the DNA in you and awakening the memory of your intuitive gifts, of your blood lineage gifts, of your soul lineage gifts. So we hold an activation field that is very potent for healers, for intuitives, for light workers, and so we hold that field. But then in this red tent, it's like this: we all get to bring those witchy, beautiful, intuitive gifts online together and create this powerful energy, working with moon energy, working with womb energy, seeding our intentions, and then carrying that forth through the next moon cycle, not just for ourselves. The amount of healing that's going to happen for us as individuals is going to be so potent, but it's also, we're going to be doing blessings, prayers, healings for the collective too. So this is bringing powerhouse women together to do the work within, as we're also bringing medicine to the planet. So it's so big, it's so important. And I know that there are, these circles, women gathering in circles all over the world is some of the most potent medicine that can be happening on the planet right now. And there's so many sisters that are gathering in circles everywhere around the world. And we are one red tent healing ceremony where you can come join us in that sistership, in that circle, and add, so that we keep magnifying that energy on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. So that we can continue to amplify as we individually heal, right? And collectively heal. That is, echoes out into the world at large. And this is a real opportunity for us to come together and to weave that tapestry and to hold one another and to redefine what sisterhood is for us, right? And how much we have to give to one another, how much we have to share and receive from one another, right? There's deep and potent medicine in that in and of itself. So we have our first red tent on Friday. We will put the link here for you all to check it all out. If this speaks to you, know that you're being called. This is like, I feel like this is a bigger calling that's happening for a lot of us, not all of us, but for a lot of us. And the more of us that listen, the more powerful it is collectively as well.
I'm so excited. It's like, and every activation that we do, every time we gather, it just keeps getting more potent and more potent. It just feels like Spirit so led us to bring these red tents together and to bring women together in a way that is so potent and uplifting and activating of us all, so that we're each receiving activations of everybody's medicine. That's part of it. That's part of the weaving, is that we're receiving each other's gifts, we're receiving each other's transmissions, we're receiving each other's intentions, and that just creates this unbelievable, powerful healing uprising that cannot happen alone, because it's not meant to. We are not meant to be in isolation. We are meant to be gathering. We are meant to be connecting. We're meant to be remembering who we really are. And to use the strength and the power of all of our gifts together collectively.
That. Underline, exclamation point.
Yeah. And Janet and I really like, we hold the transmission of women working together with zero competition. Janet and I work together in complete and utter magic. We work together in such a flow of spirit, in such a flow of divinity and prosperity and abundance and sisterhood. And this really is the way. You know, this is the new way of how we're meant to be working with each other in a way that uplifts and is so light and easy and fun and way more impactful because we're coming together and working together in it.
Yes.
Yes. Aho, Emily.
Aho. Oh, so if you don't have any questions, feel free to drop them into the comments. We will check those and be present to that. We would love to see you in our red tent if this speaks to you. And just so much gratitude for even being here with us in this live. You can also join us, like I said earlier, in our Sacred Activation Journeys group. It's a completely free group where you get lots of juicy goodness, calibrations every week. Yeah, I mean, so we'd love to see you there as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings to all of you.
Yes, thank you, Emily. Aww. Thank you, everybody. So much love. Bye.